Hi folks, you're with us today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. I'm having my beginning to talk cough here, so let me get that out of the way. So I'd like to talk about, in this essay, I'd like to talk about the Russell Brand business. Now, as I understand it, and I've looked at what's online and in the public domain thus far, where my understanding is that four women have claimed that between 10, and 15 years ago, they were engaged. They were, having an intimate situation, or an unwilling intimate situation with Mr. Brand, and he was, engaging in what they're alleging or claiming to be inappropriate behaviour. Now, I don't know if any of this did or didn't happen, or if it's pure fantasy or what. I don't know. And what I do know is that if any of us are to know what's happened, then this must be rigorously tested in a 100% impartial court of law, where facts and evidence are all that matters. And that should be tested rigorously, and that these people that are claiming Mr. Brand engaged in inappropriate behaviour should be cross-examined with vigour and with rigour. And if it's proven to be so, then the appropriate penalties prescribed by law can be applied. And if not, and if these allegations are proved to be false or ginned up or have been orchestrated by the media establishment, then appropriate punishments and accountability should also be administered in that direction. But let's have a look at this whole issue of he tried to rape me. And I make no prejudicial assumption one way or another, but let's look at the balance of probability. Let's look at the overall architectural likelihood of this. Now, Mr. Brand, I'm not a follower of Russell Brand, by the way. It was only like a couple of years ago or so that I heard his name for the first time. I've tried to watch some of the interviews that he's done, and I struggle to get through it. I find him a bit irritating, but that's just me. He's got a huge following, as I understand it. 6+ million followers on an online platform. And as I understand it, he was a big star, or is a big star. So just I hadn't heard about it. So I suppose that shows how unplugged in I was to that scene. Anyway, so he's quite a big star, and he does movies and all sorts of things. So I guess there are a lot of women, young women, women generally, that would want to be in his company. He, as I understand it, he had a reputation for, as he claims himself, by the way, a reputation for engaging in multiple intimate relationships and doing drugs, all sorts of stuff like that, and living that sort of lifestyle. And yet there are young women queuing up to be in his company and to be alone in his company. Now, were these young women who thought they'd be in control of the situation, and they ended up not? What was it? So if someone has this reputation and is a self-declared reputation, and someone who is able to score a marriage with Katy Perry, who many young women think is the epitome of hotness, then hey, I fucked the guy who fucked Katy Perry or something. That's pretty much a badge of honor you can push around the place. So there was no shortage of young women wanting to be in Mr. Brand's company and to be alone with him. So that's a consideration there. To also then claim to be a victim of, I busted my ass to be in his company and to be alone with him. I knew exactly what he's like, but then he tried to fuck me, and so now I'm going to claim it was rape. I don't buy that. But did it not pan out the way you wanted? Did he fuck you? Then he wasn't interested in you the next day. Well, that's a possibility. That's still not inappropriate behaviour, though, especially given the the rock and roll type lifestyle that Mr. Brand was leading. Now, and that these women actively wanted to be part of. But I just want to sort of talk more widely about it because having a lunch with a very senior judge, not long ago, and I've mentioned this in other videos, that it came up in conversation about how the sort of cases that the judge was hearing had changed over the years. So, for example, 20 years ago, now bear in mind this is a judge that hears the most serious cases, murder with robbery and, fucking triple homicide and da-da-da-da. This is a judge who's hearing the most serious cases around, and cases where, there's very, very rarely a case that this judge would hear where there isn't a custodial sentence being issued. So this is the level of case that the judge is hearing. And so 20 years ago it was homicide, and it was guys running into a bank with shotguns to shoot up the place and steal the money and all that sort of stuff, and security guards getting shot and shootouts in the street and all. Those were the cases that homicide and so on. Those are the cases. But today, and I just came up indirectly in conversation that, because I still assumed things like murders and armed robberies would still be what the senior judge would hear, but no, not anymore. Rape cases are now the majority of cases that one of the most senior judges in the country is hearing. Excuse me? What happened to all the murder? Murder. Nah. So really, the judge is now hearing cases, the senior judge is now hearing cases that are really ideological. They're not legal cases as in the homicides and this sort of stuff. They're ideological cases. And that is now the majority of cases that a judge is hearing. So I just want to mention that because it indicates how the justice system has changed. The Department of Prosecutions is happy to cop a plea deal on homicides and bank robberies and so on. Look, we'll lock you up for 25 years. It goes to trial. But look, if you roll over 15 years, then we can fix this up today. Sign here, done deal. And look, you'll be out in 10 years with good behaviour. So what's your problem? But in the rape cases, for two reasons, they want an ideological scalp now. So the politicization of the law and an ideological politicization of the law and of due legal process, by the way, has changed now. So the prosecution's department, they want ideological scalps. So you murdered somebody, who gives a fuck? Murder, like the collateral damage to just the day-to-day function of society. But rape, we want ideological. Now, rape cases you can almost divide into two categories. This is not an absolute uniform thing, but it's not far off. Is that rape cases involve non-white males. So non-white males, they're usually slam dunks. The evidence is overwhelming. There's no way the guy's going to get off. So again, the plea deal kicks in, where look, 20 years if you want to fight it in court, or we'll give you 10 years if you roll over, and you'll be out in 7, that sort of thing. So they've got a slam dunk case here, but with the white guy, and the middle class white boy, that's the scalp they want. They want those scalps. Ideologically, they salivate over getting those white boy scalps. So, and the higher profile, the white boy, the bigger the scalp, the bigger the ideological victory. So the white boy here, the white boy is he hasn't. I mean, to the idea that a rape took place or a sexual assault or sexually inappropriate behaviour. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's quite technical. So they're using legal technicalities to chase after the guy. Again, it's the thing of. She was 5 minutes away from being legal age. She was 16 years, 11 months, and 29 and a half days old. Therefore, it was rape of a little girl. They'll play that one. They do some big damage with that, or something like she had 2.5 glasses of wine, and because the limit is 2, or supposed theoretical ideological limit is 2, as soon as she had that extra half glass of wine, she could no longer give consent, legally give consent or informed consent. So even though she did give consent, because of that extra half glass of wine, the consent is legally invalid. Therefore, it is rape. So they use these technical tricks and tactics. Similarly, in court, the pretty much now the burden of proof is reversed. She said you did it, even though there's no DNA evidence or any evidence that it happened. If she alleges it, he really has to disprove it. So the burden of proof's been reversed now. It shouldn't really sort of be that way. There's no law that says it must be that way, but that's in effect how due legal process has been corrupted by ideological law. He's the oppressor, she's the victim, and they go into court. So that's immediately a prejudicial starting point that he has to overcome. And there's been some recently fairly high-profile cases around where the case has been brought into court purely on an allegation. There's no DNA evidence. There's no evidence of anything, she alleges it, obviously, and it can be proved they were in the same building at the same time. That can be proved, but the evidence of was there a rape. But so they're able to still bring those cases to court, which shows how motivated the prosecutions and so on are. Now, the other thing yet another thing, is how people can come up, women can come up with something that happened 10, 15, 25, 30, 40 years, 50 years ago. I mean, look at the way they're chasing after Bill Cosby at the moment, but in the United States. So you can come up with something that happened 40, 50 years ago and say, well, I'm alleging that it was rape. Now, how you can take something to court like that, where there's no material evidence you can produce, it's purely a he said, she said thing, and you can actually take that to court, that astonishes me. But there you go. Now, with the coming back to sort of being Mr. Brand, I've seen multiple times in business, at the C level, if you like, of business, where the decision's made, they want to get rid of somebody, or someone's inconvenient, or somebody's seen something that they refuse to sign off on some big corrupt deal or something like that, and they decide this person's got to go. So they'll do a few things. They'll do a search through their expense accounts and try and find something there. They'll have a look at their online activity to see if they can find if they are accessing porn sites or something like that. So they'll do that little bit first. Now, if they run out of things to get them on, then the first go-to, the primary, the numero uno go-to, is you mistreated a woman somewhere, and we, the big hairy-chested executive suite, boys, we're here to protect women, we protect the honor of women. Oh, yes. That's when we're not going to prostitutes every day, of course, but we're here to protect the honor of women. So they'll interview all the women around the guy, and they'll do it quietly. They'll interview them and well, did he say anything? Did he do anything? Did he ever touch you? Did he ever make a joke that had sexual innuendos, or did he ever, anything will do, just say something. And no matter how small the transgression, indeed, if there even was one, did he use the F word in your presence or something like that, then that's it. Sexually inappropriate behavior, oppression of women, oppression. We will not tolerate that in this company. Women, our first priority is to protect women from evil. So they'll try to gin up anything, and then they'll try and set up scenarios. And again, I've seen this absolutely firsthand. Let's say none of the women around the guy are prepared to say that he did anything. They may even offer a few inducements, maybe a nice vacation somewhere. But not all women will go for that. So they'll try and set up a scenario. So there'll be a temp secretarial or admin person will be hired. It'll be like they'll purposefully hire somebody and say that she's going to be working in your department or section or whatever, and so and it'll be some frail little blonde girl with a plunging neckline or something like that, and they'll do everything they can to provide opportunity just so he'll do something inappropriate. Anything will do. And then right on cue, she's meant to come running out and with the torn blouse if he tried to rape me and this sort of thing. So they'll go to those levels of setups. Another thing they do, I mean, this is the lengths that they'll go to, by the way. So another thing they'll do is say he's traveling on a plane, for example. Then they'll actually go to the trouble of arranging, sitting a woman next to him, who's again, her job is to say, to try and engage him in conversation, get him to say something or do something inappropriate or anything, and then she can jump up from the airplane seat screaming, and he tried to rape me, and make a formal report, and it's a big drama, police and this and that. So these are the lengths that these people go to. So you need to sort of understand that when you displease people with power, this is the sort of thing they can do. Now, there's various talk that Russell Brand has been being critical of COVID lockdowns, other things like that, and that the deep state wants to get. I don't doubt that it does happen. It is currently happening, and he's got a big enough following where they'd want to neutralise somebody like that. Remember, the sitting president of the elected sitting president of the United States was just arbitrarily taken off one of the world's leading social media platforms. That's the power of the deep state. So, Mr. Brand isn't in that league, and so, but he's still someone, a known influencer, and neutralising people that can influence in the direction that the deep state doesn't want is definitely something that's on the cards. Now, coming to certainly what I've seen, at least of the synopsis of the allegations being made, that the crying women in shadows with dramatic music in the background, the production thing. Straight away, I'm looking at that thinking, you're ginning it up. If you've got to gin it up to that extent, how true can it be? Now, it may or may not be true, and I don't pretend that. But the real challenge, I think, is why, explain, well, why didn't you come forward 10 years ago or 15 years ago? Did they come forward? Did the police investigate it then and say, look, there's no evidence, and dismiss it? But now it's politicized, and it's done politicized within an ideological vacuum. So that's a big danger. Now, the danger to Mr. Brand is I believe, this is only my opinion, of course, and, what do I know, is that will Mr. Brand be able to get an utterly impartial judge? An utterly impartial judge. The judge will rely solely on the facts and the evidence and the veracity of the evidence. Is that even possible? I mean, the temptation for the government and the deep state and the prosecutions department, and or the temptation to select a judge who will be very, very unsympathetic to Mr. Brand and will be prepared. And I've seen court cases where if she says that it's fact, if he denies it, and she says it's fact with no evidence to support it, but if he denies it with evidence, the judge will just airily dismiss the evidence and say, I don't accept it. What she says stands. So if there's a chance, I don't know whether this will or won't happen, by the way, but there's a decent chance that Mr. Brand could be dragged into court, assume it even gets into court, gets dragged into court, and anything but impartial judge, or he gets a lawyer that just somehow seems to be a fumbling mess, and that's because that lawyer's been told that you will never practice law again if you put up a vigorous defence of your client. These are the issues. These are the things, I think, where the downstream or upstream, whatever you want to call it, danger lies. But let's have it tested in court. These allegations about people and inappropriate behaviour, particularly a man who's supposed to have been inappropriate towards women, and that person is also a threat to the deep state. You must look at those with great suspicion. Great suspicion. Even if it's to the point where the deep state decided, let's nail this guy. Let's get this motherfucker. And so let's find out who he may have known back in the day, like 10 years ago. Let's find out who he knew, who he was dating, or the sort of people were hanging around, and let's get some names. And it wouldn't be, there'll be some very disturbed young groupies that would have think they weren't, oh, he'll marry me, but all he did was fuck me and then forget about me. There'd be a lot of vengeance type things going through the minds of those people. Their lives haven't turned out well since. They want someone to blame. Their lives haven't turned out well since. They want someone to blame. All that sort of stuff. But these people, there's been activists that have gone out and looked for these people and ginned them up. Well, don't you want to have what about justice for all women? Don't you want misogynists to be, don't you want Hitler to be, you have the power to bring Hitler to trial and gin them up this way. And they're probably quite simple people, or some of them might be, and they'll be susceptible to those messages of, you're just a little girl in a little garden. You dreamed of a big white knight coming on a horse with lots of money who would do that, and it didn't happen. You need to hold to you. You want to blame someone for that. Why don't we blame him? That type of narrative. And but I'm very skeptical, given that a very activist, ideologically activist, media outlet is pushing this. So. But I'd like it to be dealt with in a completely impartial court of law. By the way, I'll close with this in the rule of law. Why is Channel 4 in Britain so keen about going after Mr. Brand, but so very reluctant to go over the far more, I would allege, far more egregious crimes committed by Muslim Pakistani gangs, raping girls that definitely were underage, substantially underage? Why wasn't that pursued with equal vigor? And that's a question that they should be required to answer. You've been fantastic today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.